Now, the Core 2 Duo E8500 is a lot better. It has a lot more cache. I think it's a 6 megabyte cache instead. And it's also got a little bit higher core clock as well, so 3.16 gigahertz stock at the box, compared to the 2.9 some of the dual core Pentium. So yeah, so guys, as you can see, there's 4 screws on the cooler most of the time. Make sure you unscrew these at like opposite ways, so there's not too much force on the processor. You just unscrew these. Can be a little bit difficult to get to. Wipe the thermal paste off the cooler and off the CPU. You can take the CPU out if it makes it a bit easier for you. Then you want to push down the little retention arm and lift it up. That's if you've got an Intel processor. AMD, you just take it out. With the Intel processor though, there's a little blue flap which you lift up, and then you'll be able to take the CPU out of its socket. Then you want to put the new CPU in. As you can see, it will line up because I'll have little cutouts on the CPU that line up with the socket. AMD, it's a little gold triangle that goes with the socket. Then we just do the opposite of what we just did. So pushing the lid back down, retention arm back down. Put a little bit of thermal paste on. I'd say put the amount of when you put the cooler on, will it cover the surface area of the CPU? Some people say a pea size, but I find it better just to do it that way instead. Make sure that it lines up correctly and you put your screws back in and you've changed your processor. So guys, the first test I decided to try out was Sonic Generations again. As I've tried this out last time, as you can see, the average was 59 FPS, the 1% low was 27 FPS, and the 0.1% low was 8 FPS. I've put here the difference compared to the dual core. So the average was up by 1.3 FPS, the 1% low was up by 12 FPS, and the 0.1% low was up by 1.9 FPS. As you can see as well in game, it is definitely stuttering a lot less as the processor isn't being maxed out as much compared to the Pentium. NASCAR Heat 4 we tried again as well. As you can see, the average is 51 FPS and the 1% low and the 0.1% low are both 0.1 FPS. Compared to the dual core, you can see that the average is up by 14.8 FPS and the 1% low and 0.1% low is up by 0.1 FPS. As if you remember in the last video, the E6500 had 0 FPS. But this is mainly the heavy scenes, and as you can see, it's still stuttering quite a bit. It's just the processor maxing out when there's a lot of things going on, like crowds and big buildings it has to render in. I went with 3D Mark's Skydiver again as well, just to see how it fared. We can't really look too much into this because the scores were quite similar. As this is more of a GPU test really, but as you can see at parts before where the processor was maxing out, you can now see that it's not maxing out as often throughout this test. So it performed a lot better in this test. Here's a score though if you want to see the scores for it, but as you can see it's definitely an improvement, but that 6 megabyte cache has seemed to help out quite a lot in performance. So should you buy an E8500 in 2020? I would say if you're on a budget, a seriously tight budget, yes, it's a good dual core CPU, but not for much more. You can go and get yourself a Q6600 quad core. It's a little bit slower on a core by core basis, but it's definitely worth it because you have more cores and more compatibility with those cores.